This ain't no audiobook. This ain't a radio play. This is a Happy Cloud AudioToon. It's that time again for the Further Adventures of Rune, Return of the Miggins, brought to you by Happy Cloud Media and Chrome Toothpaste. Droll thing life is, that my lugubrious arrangement of merciless logisticals for a futile porpoise. The most you can hope for it is some knowledgeable of your own self. That comes too late. A crop of indistinguishable regretfulness. Right am right, and wrong am wrong, and a body ain't got no business doing wrong when he ain't ignorant and knows better. Don't take life so serious, it ain't nohow permanent. Chapter 40, 75 Clicks from Eisennose. The Goromorokye River flows from the north to the very northern tip of Gilver. It twists and turns through the continent, in many places seeming to flow uphill or back upon itself, feeding hundreds of smaller rivers, lakes, and tributaries. For millennia, it ran cold and clean until, 60 fleens before the First Cornelian War, Lord Sauerkraut emerged from the blasted lands and built his city of industry. The pollution corrupted the neighboring lands. The sharp smell of sewage woke Rune from his doze. It was hot, and the air was already thick, making the noxious stench even worse. His nose told him that the drainage staining the river orange was emanating from just clicks ahead. He dropped from his hammock at the bow and pawed at his nose. Hey, who set the mortuary on fire? N-word Jim looked up from tying flies. We're coming up on the moors. Which moors? Alan and Terry. We passed Christopher and Richard some time back. The Gax handed Rune a tin cup of coffee. Where do you come from? There are two things in life that are inevitable. Death and Gaxes. Polite as he was, Jim couldn't force himself to even smile at that one. Anyway, what you're smelling is the sump spewing from the drainage from the moors. Simply horrible. 'Tis the pollution from knees and toes, poisoning everything to the north. Didn't used to be this way. Progress tends to spoil the present. Notice the sludge around the Nellie. Rune had noticed. A lumpy bronze slick slimed over the Green River, washing further downstream into wells, drinking tributaries, aquifers, places where it was important for the water to not be orange and oily. We're passing the sump now. It was said that the scientist named R.B. Hollandaise, who invented that very sump, succumbed to a toxic transformation. His body broke down, sir, but he reemerged days later. His body made of the moss and the peat of the moors. He became something. You got a lot of nerve judging the Gax's joke. Suddenly, the river exploded, tossing the Nellie sideways. Jim shouted to his pilot, Crawford! Crawford stuck his head out of the wheelhouse. We have met the enemy, and he is over there! Rune and the Gax drew their weapons. The Gax had Tallulah. Rune had his new sword, fresh from the armory of Balls Deep. He dubbed it Yut's Hammer. Across from them, the riverbank was thick with vegetation and overhanging branches from the zeeping zillow trees. Breathing slowly and steadily, Rune watched for the slightest movement. An object came hurtling their way. The river exploded again, rocking the Nellie and drenching its crew. Get a beat on them, Gax! The Gax skidded to a rail, Tallulah in hand. Claw, paw, whatever. Belay! Ordered Jim. It's the Contragelicos! The blurg is that? They're local freedom fighters. They're armed against Grimfoyle. We're on the same side. Yeah, blurg! Gax, hold your fire! Jim drew a white handkerchief from his pocket and waved it at the shore, the interdimensional signal for, Stop shooting at us! Gradually, heads popped up from the bushes, faces emerged from the woods. It was difficult to make out species. The Contragelicos preferred fanciful helmets resembling both animorphs and humanish. Jim commenced communication. It was a complicated dance requiring both semaphore and advanced tap. To signal their understanding, the Contragelicos held their weapons above their heads, the interdimensional response meaning, Right, sorry, it's quite fine now, sir. I've let them know our plans. All of our plans? Well, I can't be sure of the jazz hands, and I may have misspelled the foxtrot, but I did my best. From somewhere off their port side, there came a twang, and then quickly, Oh, Steve! Gababoo! The Nellie lurched to starboard and nearly over. Rune flew backwards, ass over ears, slammed headfirst into the bulkhead. The last thing he heard before the darkness overtook him came from far in the distance, a voice he didn't recognize. God damn it, Gary! Chapter 41. Aboard the Delirium Tremens. It was written, I should be loyal to the nightmare of my choice. If you can't win, don't join them. Learn how to lose. Rune regained consciousness in a hospital bed surrounded by vampires. He recognized the smell. Vampires had an aroma of sandalwood, sexual tension, and Drakkar Noir. It was fine, he'd been surrounded by worse. Contrary to popular belief, only vampires in severely economically depressed areas resorted to predatory behavior. In any other environment, vampires can find plentiful volunteers, particularly because a vampire's saliva acts as a powerful hallucinogenic with mortal biology. Tooth-to-vein contact provides the best high. It's addictive, and far more effective for pain relief than what's available over the counter. Vampires don't have to hunt. Dinner comes to them. Anne Rice rarely wrote about the narcotic effects of vampire spit, because it's yucky. A quick survey of the concerned but bloodless faces above him, sight, scent, etc., told Rune that they were upper middle class, lawful neutral-ish, and had recently eaten, and were all very drunk. Smelling the pungent air told him further that they were still on the river. A muffled told him he was aboard a steamboat. Posters on the wall told him the ship's name was the Delirium Tremens, and it was available to book for parties. The relieved and smiling vampire closest to him told him that his name was Chet. "I'm Chet," said Chet, confirming this suspicion. "Afraid your yawl was mildly destroyed by the locals, sir," said Chet, smiling congenially around his fangs. "Yeah, sorry," said the contrajalgo standing amongst the undead. His helmet was shaped like a horse skull, and it was more upsetting when the visor was lifted, giving one the impression that he was wearing a grotesque coffee pot on his head. "I completely misinterpreted your man's time step in the middle of his explanation." Grimacing as he sat up, Rune looked at the guy wearing the horse skull percolator. "Let me guess, you're Gary." "Oh no, no. I'm Conrad. Gary's my wife's nephew." "Everyone has a Gary," said Rune. His skull was splitting, and judging from the amount of gauze wrapped around it, had likely split literally. "Lucky for you gentlemen, we were already happening along," said Chet. The other vampires bobbed their heads along in agreement, clearly drunk on whatever was in the goblets in every hand. Rune didn't want to think about it, for fear of being offered some and having to refuse it. That would lead to discomfort, distrust, insult. Best not to acknowledge it. "Not every century we elect a new bloodfather." "Or blood mother," said another. Chet rolled his eyes. "Yes, Lilith." It was Rune's turn to roll his eyes. He'd met dozens of vampires over the years, and he couldn't count the number of Liliths among them. Vampires were famous for their decadent parties, not their originality. With his vision cleared, Rune realized he'd actually recognized some of the faces in the riverboat sickbay, particularly the ones with beer bottles in hand. The Woody Hall vampires, often found slumming at the Broken Beast, were Harry, Mickey, Alice, Mooney, and Gripweed. The novelty of a newcomer having worn off, the party's boundaries expanded to the sickbay purely for purposes of mingling and hooking up. Curious vampires wandered in and out of the room, pausing only to see if the unconscious Jim and Crawford would pull through or would be added to the menu. Rune nodded towards the pilots. "Are they okay?" They will be. Their injuries were severe. "And their accents quite thick," said Lilith, before wandering away with Alice and Mickey. Rune looked around. "What about what? Hey, Gax!" To Rune's relief, the Gax popped up at the foot of his bed, having waited for his cue. He had a cup of coffee in his claw, which he offered to Rune. No matter where they were, the Gax always had excellent coffee. "Gaximum effort!" Giving the Gax plenty of side-eye, Chet leaned down to Rune. "We found him pinned to the wall by part of the railing, sir, but he wouldn't let us examine him." Rune nodded. It wasn't the first time the Gax had confounded a medic. "He's indestructible." "Nigh indestructible." "Yeah, see, he's saving the secrets of his mortality so that he can really milk his final moments. We'll never see it coming." "You know me so well, boss." Chet shrugged. "Now that the doctors say you'll be fine after some rest, I'll send someone down to check on you in a bit. Or if you're feeling up to it, please come up and join us on the Lido deck at sundown. You may not care for the beverages, but our chef offers a wonderful charcuterie board." Charcuterie? A variety of fromage and hors d'oeuvre. So a schmoo and cheese plate. Well, if you want to be reductive. Yeah, thanks for your care, in all sincerity. The Gax, too, grinned a tusk at Chet and flashed him a thumbs up, which in Gax language meant, "Eternal appreciation for bringing my gentleman back from the brink of death with your vampiric medicines." But Chet missed some of that because of the Gax's accent. His Gaxent. Keeping an eye on the exiting vampire, Conrad whipped off his helmet and dropped to Rune's side, shoving the Gax aside in the rudest of ways. "Listen, mate, you gotta help me out here. The name's not Conrad, it's Kurtz, and came up here for Godcor's Polonium Division. Now these Contragallicos think I'm a god." "And why did they think that?" Kurtz looked shamefaced. "Well, I might have told him I was, happenstance during a skirmish." "Bandolier catching arrows so you didn't bleed?" "How'd you know? Happens more often than you think." "No, I'm terrified that if I cut myself shaving, it'll kill me. You gotta get me out of here, Squire." Rune waved him off. "Yeah. How strong is this tribe in Jellicosica?" "Battle-weary, but a fierce lot. They're less a tribe than a loose anarchistic collective that now follows a god. Have I mentioned that Morphia figures in most of their rituals, birthday parties included?" "That makes much more sense now," said the Gax grumpily. He hopped onto the end of Rune's bed. "Shove over a little, boss." Without thinking, Rune obliged. "How big?" "We're some 400 strong, give or take a pikeman. Redcap danger's more in their numbers than might." Rune nodded and immediately regretted it. Instantly, under his nose, a pair of aspirin in the palm of the Gax's claw. Gaximum satisfaction. Okay, here's what you do. You tell your contragelicos to hold that border. Push the redcaps into knees and toes if possible. Doesn't exactly solve my chafing problem. Tell them you bleed their blood. Come again? You are their god. Blood that you bleed is theirs. In return, you grant them strength. Spill all of that right before the morphia kicks in. Never fails. Genius. Alright, we're in. I'll need your full force on that Wenson side for as long as you can. Then you can go back to exploiting drug addicts for power and profit. That's all I've ever wanted. I'm gonna pass out again for a while. Before the sentence had ended, Rune was unconscious. The Gax and Kurtz sat in awkward silence. Finally, the Gax held up a doom marble. Wanna watch a pics? I have You Got Chainmail, The Sickening, and Mary's Fun Outing. What are the first two like? Rom-coms. In that case, the horror. I heard you the first time. Mary's Fun Outing it is. Thus concludes this episode of the Further Adventures of Rune. Tune in next week via your favorite audio delivery system. Don't forget, full episodes and super mega chunks are available on Patreon. But you knew that already.